I think they should have driven them into an oil crisis. That's the only thing that's going to stop these maniacs. They need to have a collapsing economy themselves. They need to see people in the streets screaming bloody murder about how their lives have been devastated by this insane war. None of that has happened. Have you seen any major protests in the West against the war on Iran? I was told, we were all told, we saw this over and over and over again in the media, including the Iranian media, that the Iranians understood that you couldn't trust Trump, and so that they were going to demand that a huge amount of their frozen assets be unfrozen before they performed any part of the deal. Well, that's not what this deal says. You open it up now, they're going to stock up on all of the essential commodities, and the next time you close down the Strait of Hormuz, they're going to be in a much better position to manage the problem.
We cannot put this all on Iran. I mean, this is on us. This is on the whole world to pressure our governments to stop this. Let's be honest. Iran is the only country that has actually done something. Yeah, I agree with you when you said the pain is not enough. Good day, everyone. We are here again with brother Dimitri Lascaris. Dimitri has been on our show. He's a veteran of our show many times. Just recently, we discussed about things that make us rant, and today we are again going to rant in another Rant of Brothers show. So welcome, Dimitri.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to this cathartic experience, brother. Getting this out of our system is very good for your soul.
Exactly. We had a very interesting guest often from Iran. He lives in Britain, Ali Alizadeh, and I just saw you shared something with me on X. What about something that Ali said? Can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, he, in a videotaped statement, I didn't have the opportunity to watch the whole thing before this morning. I watched a good bit of it before we spoke this morning. And in it, he said that he and other prominent Iranian voices had recently been had their accounts on X suspended or terminated. And I don't know how he knows this, but he said that he has learned that this was done at the behest of the Iranian government that communicated that request to the US government, and that J.D. Vance then contacted these media companies, or these social media companies, X in particular, and asked them to delete his account, amongst others. Now, I have no way of knowing one way or the other whether this is true, and I'm not sure how much information he has to support that allegation. So I can't comment on that. I haven't spoken to him about it. In fact, I've never interviewed him. This was the first time I actually had, because the post on X really caught my attention, that I really sat down and listened to him talk. And then he went on and he began to criticize the MOU and explain what it is that he believes the powers, that certain powers within the Iranian government were finding problematic about his critique. And what he said was, he started going through the provisions of the MOU, and then he got to the opening of the Strait of Hormuz. And he said something which I thought was quite compelling. He said, you're taking the pressure off of the US government at a critical moment by opening up the Strait of Hormuz. Now, he said that the lead negotiator for Iran says, well, we're well aware that they may violate the agreement, and then we'll just close the Strait of Hormuz again. And he said, well, this is not a wise strategy, because when the Strait of Hormuz was closed back in, I guess it was early March, the United States really wasn't ready for it. They kind of deluded themselves into thinking that it wasn't going to happen. But in any case, for example, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve was quite low at that point when they closed the Strait of Hormuz. He goes, you open it up now, they're going to stock up on all of the essential commodities, And the next time you close down the Strait of Hormuz, they're going to be in a much better position to manage the problem. And there's one thing for sure. I think that this is something you could just assume that is going to be the case. Over time, the world, and particularly the countries in that region, the United States, are going to adapt to the US, the Iranian control over the Strait of Hormuz. They're going to find other ways to get the commodities out. And they're talking openly about this, creating new pipelines, creating new ports, new LNG facilities. So that form of leverage over time will diminish. There's no question about it. It's unclear over what period of time. Is it going to be a matter of months? Is it going to be a matter of years? But it will diminish over time. And so I think he has a very valid point here. It isn't necessarily the wise approach to allow the United States, give them this breathing space, and the Gulf autocracies to adapt to Iran's newfound control over the Strait of Hormuz. And one thing I've been saying from the beginning, it just seems so obvious to me, Karim. I shouldn't it's anybody who has a functioning brain should know this, and many people do. It's not just me. I'm sure you know this. There's huge numbers of people around the world who understand this. The United States and Israel are going to completely disregard this agreement. They're going to violate it 6 ways from Sunday. They've been doing it every single day already. There hasn't been a single day on which they have respected this agreement. So the question that I've been asking is, if you know to a certainty that they're going to violate it in very important ways and repeatedly, as I think they do, why would you do any deal with them at all? What is the point? And I've been struggling to answer that question on my own program. What do you think? Do you think that's inevitable? And why do you think they did the deal in that case?
Well, it's funny that you say that. I wrote 2 articles recently on our Substack. The first one was a week ago, exactly a week ago. It's called "The Handshake of Death: Iran and the Fatal Mistake of Negotiating with Evil." So that is number one. That one also went pretty viral. But I also wrote another one that where I went a little bit deeper into it, and that one was entitled "Handing Over Hormuz: Did the victor negotiate like the underdog?" Okay, that's the question in my title. I said the same thing. So Ali Alizadeh has been on our show multiple times. I have great respect for his analytical capabilities. In my opinion, he's really an intellectual powerhouse. The man reads a lot, interviews all these very interesting people. For example, Gerald Horn. By the way, he is. I noticed the man knows a lot. He's doing activism. You see him on the streets in London protesting against the genocide or what's happening in Iran. So he's an activist as well. Great respect for him. I had him on with another person I greatly respect. That's Ehsan Safarnajat, of course. And I had the two together. And Ehsan Safarnajat and Ali Alizadeh are both individuals who are pro-Iran, who are supportive of Iran, who are against imperialism, who are deeply committed to their country. So for me, those people, if critique comes from these kind of people, I take them seriously. I find it very believable. And I'm going to send you that interview. You got to see it, or that panel. It was also, of course, with Sister Vanessa Beeley, who always has very good questions. And Ali said already back then, that was before the MOU, he said, while Iran is defiant, he said that is because there is outside pressure coming from the people. They are on the streets every night pushing their government to stay defiant. And he said, but his fear was then already, that was before the MOU, his fear was that the momentum of the Iranian government is disappearing from the inside. So he's not talking about the momentum against the US or Israel. He was talking about the momentum inside is slowly disappearing, in the sense, he said, that his fear was that the forces of rapprochement, the forces of um, how do you call these people again? The reformists, the ones who say we need to deal with the United States, we need to talk, we need to be friends, we need to. Is that those forces were slowly gaining momentum again, and of course, with the opening of the internet, these are the forces who use that sentiment that the internet needs to be opened up. Well, you know what happens. Hybrid warfare is something the Israelis and the Americans are best at. And we have to ask ourselves the question, as outsiders, of course, and Iranians know this better, so I will talk to Iranians in the future again about this. We have to ask ourselves the questions: are these the people right now negotiating? Because uh, uh, um, you have a Galibaf who seems to get a lot of anger from his own people. I listen to panels often with a lot of Iranians in it who are very unhappy about what's going on. Others are saying, yes, the 10-point plan is in a way can be seen as a victory. But indeed, handing over the Strait of Hormuz immediately when the United States is coming close to a shortage is they say very unwise. Now there are threats that Iran is going to close it again, of course, but it is kind of strange. And what I find worrisome personally is that I hear so many Iranians who are very supportive of their country, who are not in any way like, oh, and I hate these people and these are wrong politicians and these are no, they are genuinely nuanced people who are saying they're worried now. They're genuinely worried. And there's one more thing that I personally think is very worrying. I wrote that indeed in that article entitled um, The Handshake of Death. And I think there's something going on here that people need to start thinking about. And I bet you most Iranians have already thought about that. So I'm not trying to teach people something. Just a general audience. I personally think what made Iran such an interesting and anti-imperialist and defiant state is, of course, first and foremost, the kind of culture they have, the kind of people they are. But there's another material aspect, structural aspect that plays a role. Iran has been excluded from the Western capitalist system through sanctions, through you name it. It needed to find a way to be an alternative, to function as an alternative. The United States has been successful over and over and over and over again in history by destroying countries either through military means and then building them up and incorporating them into the capitalist system, or just negotiating them into the capitalist system. Even the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, was a very, very anti-imperialist decolonial organization. And then they started shaking hands on the lawn of the White House, and they were slowly co-opted into the kind of imperialist system, the defanged, you could say, by co-opting them. And one of the best ways is indeed to co-opt a country or a group into the capitalist system. And I think the United States has realized you cannot bomb the Iranians into submission. So why don't we do it even more sneaky? We start to incorporate them into the capitalist system and they will eventually become vassals. So you lift sanctions, you force them to invest or to buy from the United States, open up their markets maybe, uh, and 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 eventually slowly getting politicians in Iran that are on the US payroll. Okay, because there's that every country has people. There are no people who are 100% morally above that. Every country has people that are susceptible to the power of capital. And I think personally that is a real danger, that the United States has decided, okay, hard military power may not work. These people are scheming all the time. They're not stopping. And they're now trying a different tactic. Why don't we slowly incorporate them into the capitalist system and they will turn into a vessel like everyone else? Egypt, from Egypt to you name it.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? That's a fear that I have, and
Oh,
many with me.
entirely legitimate fear, and that may be what's going on. Personally, I don't think that they've given up on bombing Iran into oblivion. I think that they may be coming back for another round or two. They need to replenish their munitions. They were getting dangerously low. And so I think the goal remains to destroy Iran. I'm absolutely convinced of it. Integration is not on the table. This $300 billion reconstruction fund. To me, that's just a big, fat, juicy carrot that the Americans dangled in front of the Iranians with no intention of ever delivering it in order to induce them to open up the Strait of Hormuz. That's all that is, and they're going to go back to a hot war. They're going to also continue to try to destabilize the government, to create internal dissension, and I think we are a
Yeah, but
long way.
sorry for interrupting, Dimitri. I know I'm interrupting you very quickly, but when you say like the internal disruption, that's something they would like. I think that has that same end goal. You want an internal disruption to eventually get a kind of government that is a vessel of the United States.
Sure.
Now, you can do that through that kind of hard power. And I agree with you. There's a high chance that they will still go that route. But I think there is also a very, very scheming way of just slowly transforming through capital and vesselization the government into a kind of Saudi Arabia or something. You know,
Yeah,
that I just
it's
feel they're
kind of what they
scheming.
did with Venezuela. I mean, they seem to have pretty much done this to the Venezuelan government. I'm sorry to say, and so maybe they think that that's the best path. In defense of the crew within the Iranian government that has uh, signed on to this agreement, I do think that there is one possible. I don't put any more highly than that because I don't know. I don't have the facts to tell you whether this is what is going on. But one possible legitimate explanation for what they've done, which I've talked about on my program repeatedly, and that is that the blockade may have been bringing the Iranian economy to the brink of collapse. They have access to economic data that we don't have access to, and so they may have said, "Look, given everything that's going on, we all of these criticisms are entirely justified. We don't believe for one second the Americans are going to comply with this. The Israelis are going to violate it 6 ways from Sunday, and we realize that opening up the Strait of Hormuz now is going to compromise our leverage in the future because they're going to adapt. But the reality is, we just got to get the blockade lifted because our economy is about to collapse." And they have been shipping out oil, I would imagine, from the Persian Gulf, the Iranians, at a furious rate during the past week. And there have been legitimate, credible reports about this, that they've generated billions of dollars of revenue already. Plus, their storage capacity was reaching its maximum, or oil storage capacity. And once that happened, they were potentially going to be forced to shut down oil wells. And that's technically problematic for a variety of reasons, which we don't need to get into. So by shipping out all this oil, they're generating much needed revenue. They're creating more storage capacity for the resumption of the war. And they might have just been forced to do a deal they knew was going to be violated for that reason. So I just don't know whether or not that is the situation that they were confronting, economically speaking. But in a way, it all may be moot, Karim. Oh, and by the way, I just want to point out here that the alternative media has been, I want to reiterate, that they have been presenting this as a stunning victory for Iran. I think these declarations are premature, and we need to tone down the triumphalism. We all want to believe that Iran has delivered a final, decisive blow to these monsters, and that day may well come, but we are not there yet. We're not there by a long shot. As wonderful as it is, everything that they've accomplished thus far is admirable, is heroic. We simply are not there, and we need to stop engaging in wishful thinking. So that is a message that I never tire of conveying to our audience.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Dimitri. I've been very frustrated myself. Like I said, I even use it as a picture in one of my articles, or just literally a screenshot of one of those triumphalist thumbnails. Like, US historic most what was it? The historic most. I don't know. Like oh no, now I have to
Most
see it. Sorry.
humiliating defeat in U.S. History.
Oh yeah, here I have it. I actually, you're right. So here's so the thumbnail is total surrender, and then Iran deal, the biggest defeat in U.S. history. And I'm like, guys, we are not there yet. Slow down, United States and Israel. I mean, these guys are look how long they go on now. Also with Russia and Ukraine, and you think this is the defeat and they're done? We really gotta stop doing that, guys, because this is, uh, yeah.
Yeah, they're saying also
Luckily it's not.
the war's going to be over in Ukraine in 3 months. I'm like, what? Are you out of your minds? So that, even if the Ukrainians lose all of the territory that Russia has annexed. Okay, so the rest of Russia takes Zaporozhye, Russia takes Kherson City, Russia takes Kramatorsk and Slavyansk in the next 3 months. Which, by the way, I think is delusional. There's no way they're going to take all those cities, and they're all within the territories Russia's annexed. But let's say they do. The war's not going to stop. They're just going to continue to produce drones in European countries, more and more of them, more and more destructive, continue to deliver them. And you don't have to be on the front line to use those drones, right? So even if the Ukrainians are running out of soldiers, you can put them dozens of kilometers away from the front line, maybe even in Western Ukraine, and they'll be operating from some relatively safe bunker, these drones. And they can continue to inflict significant damage on Russia and disrupt its economy, its oil trade, deepen the dissatisfaction within Russian society at the mounting casualties and so forth. They can keep that going for years, and they will. They absolutely will. So the idea that that war is going to be over this year, what drug you smoking, man?
Yeah, and it's such binary, unnuanced thinking. Bam, it's over. Historic defeat. And I'm like, guys, just can we wait for maybe a couple of months? Let's see where this goes. It's I mean, even if the kinetic part of the war is over, these let's just only focus. Let's forget about Europe. Let's only focus on Israel and the United States. You think their massive, massive intelligence operations will just cease operating? You think the Mossad and the CIA and everything will just stop with their hybrid warfare and their infiltration in the country and their AI influence and their internet influence and their algorithms and their BBC Persia and their trainings of proxy groups around the border of Iran? I mean, there is just literally there's no rest as long as empire exists. You know what I mean? And definitely with a victory. And I wanted to get a little bit back to what we said about Ali Alizadeh in the beginning, Dimitri. You said that you and I find, like I said, Ali Alizadeh, I find him an extremely credible individual, greatly respect him. So when you say that he genuinely thinks that it's the Iranian government who has asked him to be removed from X, as somebody he is a pro-Iranian anti-imperialist, I find that then quite credible. That's just me. I like the guy. I find him a credible individual. And if that were true, and we don't know, of course, you're absolutely right. But if that were true, that means that my fears may actually be quite, how can you say that? How can I say that? Realistic. The fact, if they are asking critical Iranians that are pro-Iran, but maybe critical of some of the things, and they will ask that to a Western platform to remove that individual, I find it very worrisome about the kind of negotiations and the kind of politicians you have behind that MOU. To be very
It is.
honest, that's the feeling. Yeah.
It is very. But what? Who is they? This is the ultimate question, the very important question for those of us who are concerned where all of this is heading. they could be somebody high up in the Iranian government who is bristling at this criticism and is absolutely determined to see this deal through and actually believes that it's going to work out wonderfully in the end. Who placed a call to somebody high up in the Trump administration or conveyed the message through a mediator. It's not necessarily a collective decision of the Iranian government. Okay, so we don't know. I'm not sure that Ali even knows who they is. He just knows it came from somebody within the government. The other thing I would point out is that the government is not unified on this position. We know this because the supreme leader himself just issued a letter stating that he had, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, I had serious reservations about this agreement and I only authorized its signature because the president, Mahmoud Pezeshkian, personally assumed responsibility for protecting the goals that I've specified and for failure if it doesn't work out. So, and there are clearly people in high positions of power in Iran who agree with him, and they just shut down the Strait of Hormuz 2 days later. So there is not. I think it's a mistake for us to talk about the Iranian government as if it is monolithic. There is a disagreement, which is perfectly normal and natural. There's a disagreement within the Iranian government about this. It would be amazing if there weren't differences of opinion on how to deal with this extraordinarily complex situation and high stakes situation. So I don't, automatically assume bad faith on the part of, uh, the people within the Iranian government who are I'm trying to understand why they might have done this. I mentioned the fact that the country may have been on the verge of economic collapse because of the blockade, and I also don't believe that they're unified in terms of how to deal with this problem, which I think is totally normal. And the closure of the Strait of Hormuz may signal that there is a shift in the pendulum, and the debate has swung in favor of those who are opposed to doing a deal with the devil, as you so eloquently or correctly described it. Okay, so I think there's a power. Maybe a power struggle isn't the right phrase to use, but there's a debate. There's definitely a debate going on, and I don't think the debate is finished. And I think the debate may have just swung in favor of those they describe as hardliners. I would describe them as realists. Okay, as the true pragmatists who understand how the world actually works.
Yeah, exactly. It's not hardliners. You know what it is? It's that these other people are often the types that you see in many societies, also here in Asia, in many countries, is that these are the types of, you have always have individuals within societies that have that weird kind of naivete that there is a way to be equals with the United States, that you can be friends, that you need to know we should not fight, we need to find a way to cooperate and uh, um, to integrate ourselves with the American global financial system. And these are often the people that are educated. Um, that these are people that are often educated in Ivy League school, Western universities, these kind of stuff. And these are the types of people that often go back to their society. Uh, often, yeah, like I said, highly educated individuals, often with a degree from the West, and they try to. They are the kind of comprador class kind of forces that try to push their society into, you can almost say, a slave like position towards the United States. Now, I'm not saying that you have that in Iran. Like I said, I'm not, I cannot say that for the Iranian people. I'm just saying that I'm fearful of that. These kind of colonial mentality types are often in many societies around the world. And if you have a very open or democratic society like Iran, let's be honest here, it's a very pluralistic society in that sense with different voices, then you have a chance that these people are becoming popular and may do something that will put Iran how can you say that, a submissive position towards the United States. I don't know. I've studied a lot in my life this kind of comprador classes, colonial mentality, Western education, what that does to all these political higher ups in societies around the world, and genuinely, I'm quite worried about that. That's maybe a personal thing, but when I hear um, these discussions of panels, these are online panels between lots of Iranians. When I hear them discuss that, the Pezeshkian people, and I'm worried that these people are that there is this kind of colonial mentality naivete among some of those people that really believe that, oh, we can be friends, we can work together with the United States. It's a very weird thing. I don't know, but
Yeah.
um,
In every society, you have that. We have that here in Greece. The collab. Well, I'm not suggesting that Pezeshkian is a collaborator, but we have collaborators in Greece. We have collaborators. There's collaborators in Lebanese society and Palestinian society. Unfortunately, they exist. And then people who aren't collaborators necessarily, but they're people who are, for some reason, enchanted with Westernism and Western lifestyle, and they want to emulate that. And they've been fooled into thinking that that's an option that's available to them. So that's all true.
oh,
But it,
just to jump in, because I was just keeping thinking, who am I thinking about? Who said that? Who said? Now I got it. It's Nima Alkorshit, when he was on my show, and I can advise everybody to see that interview because he goes very personal as an Iranian, and he said there is this class of people in Iran, and I think he refers to people are more to the side of Pezeshkian. And he said that's a class of people, he said, that are educated in the West, that come back to Iran and that say, we are nothing. We are nothing. We need to be part of the West. These people are above us. They can teach us how to become part of the world. And he's very harsh about that section of the political class in Iran, where he says that these people have really internalized a kind of inferiority complex. And he's also worried that these people are getting a kind of the upper, or some kind of upper hand in society.
yeah.
And when I
Well,
saw your
go
go
ahead.
ahead,
Go ahead.
go ahead, Dimitri. Oh no, just one last thing. I saw your show today, Dimitri, where you actually said, and also in a very balanced way, by the way, not in any accusatory way, but in a balanced way, where you said, I believe that the Americans and the Israelis just have not felt enough pain. And as long as they have not felt enough pain, they are not done. So it's not time to start giving in. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. They've not achieved deterrence. The Iranians, not to the degree necessary. They will come back for more. I fear. Um, I just want to go back to this class of people exists again in every society. It certainly exists in Iran, and of course, there is a segment of Iranian society which is worse than that. They're much. I would imagine that I believe, based upon my interactions with Iranians, those living in the country. I'm not talking about the diaspora, but those living in the country, that there are a very small fringe, but there are even people in the country who are pro-Israel. There are people in the country who are pro-Trump. I think there's a very small percentage, but they're out there, and they will, you know, they will betray their country in a heartbeat. But again, this is something you find in every society. There are traitors, collaborators, the comprador class in every society. So the Iranian nation is going to have to manage that element. When it comes to Pezeshkian, I don't know too much about the man. I'm no expert in the political and personal history of the leaders of Iran, but I understand it's widely known. He's a medical doctor. I understand that he served as a physician in the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps during the war with Iraq, the war of aggression launched by Iraq on Iran, and one way to interpret his behavior is that this man is keenly aware of the horrors of war, and he's doing everything in his power to stop the violence. and perhaps even to the point of sub- exposing the country to a greater risk of violence in the future. I don't think that that's his intention, but it may be that he's so concerned about stopping the murder and the maiming and the destruction that he's willing to make more compromises than are perhaps in the long-term interests of Iran. So I don't think we should honor. He may came out recently and made a statement about people should stop using the word traitor and treason. Okay, you have a disagreement with this agreement. I can understand you have another point of view, but why do you assume that I'm acting in bad faith and I'm trying to betray my country? That made quite an impression on me. I think that he may in his own mind and heart feel that he has perfectly legitimate reasons for doing this deal, even though it's people like you and me and Ali and Nima might look at it and say, I don't feel comfortable with this.
No, I actually agree, and I must say that most people that I hear talking about Pezeshkian, also they talk about him in a respectful way, in where they say he's a good guy, he is a doctor. But many of those Iranians that I listen to, because I find out that them the most credible, of course, but they say it's the um, wrong guy. What did they say? It's the wrong guy for this place and time. So while it's a good, probably a very good guy, also a very smart guy, maybe very good for a period when things are going well. It's a safe period, a period of flourishment. Pezeshkian would be very good, but for these threatening times, these Iranians that I've heard in that panel say he's the wrong guy, and I
Yeah.
feel
Well,
that
did you notice how little he appeared in the public discourse during the past 3 months? You'd hear from Ghalibaf far more often, from Abbas Arakshi, and some of the more hawkish, senior figures in the government. Pezeshkian almost disappeared. And I think that the reason for that was that people around him realized that he was projecting weakness, and they thought this is
absolutely.
this is not the right guy for this particular moment.
And Dimitri, about that recent video that you did, can you give us a bit more an explanation why you also came to the conclusion, and like I said, very respectful. It's not that you say, oh, you should do this or you should do that, but you also said that what is being done in the MOU and the kind of conclusions that are drawn may imply that the Americans have not learned their lesson yet. The pain has not been enough yet. And you were very, very convincing in that sense, I find. And can you maybe a little bit repeat how you came to that conclusion and what do you think should be done?
All the benefits that are supposed to accrue to Iran under this agreement have been deferred. There's and Iran is opening up the Strait of Hormuz, giving up at least temporarily its greatest form of leverage. And as I mentioned, the leverage that Iran gains from control of the Strait of Hormuz will diminish over time because the United States and its allies and vassals will adapt. So I was told, we were all told, we saw this over and over and over again in the media, including the Iranian media, that the Iranians understood that you couldn't trust Trump, and so that they were going to demand that a huge amount of their frozen assets be unfrozen before they performed any part of the deal. Well, that's not what this deal says. This deal makes it very clear, and the Trump regime has been hammering this point home, that Iran is not going to get a penny until they quote unquote perform. And performance doesn't just mean opening up the Strait of Hormuz. Performance also means accepting restrictions on Iran's nuclear program. And in that press conference that JD Vance gave a couple of days ago, which I did a piece about yesterday, he said that they're going to insist on no enrichment, not drastically reduced enrichment. So that would involve Iran giving up its right under international law to enrich uranium for peaceful purposes, and it would amount to a concession that the Iranian government has never been willing to make. So if that's the position of the US government, that performing its obligations means not only opening up the Strait of Hormuz, but also agreeing to no enrichment, then all of those benefits that have been punted down the road are never going to materialize. You're never going to see those. In the interim, the United States is getting relief at the critical moment. The critical moment. Trump himself said we're like 2 or 3 weeks away from an oil crisis in this country. I think they should have driven them into an oil crisis. That's the only thing that's going to stop these maniacs. They need to have a collapsing economy themselves. They need to see people in the streets screaming bloody murder about how their lives have been devastated by this insane war. None of that has happened. Have you seen any major protests in the West against the war on Iran? I haven't seen one anywhere. Maybe a little small, tiny action here and there. You know, people in the Iranian diaspora have gotten into the streets in small groups, the ones who are actually sane and who don't support Trump and Netanyahu. But the biggest protests that I've seen in Canada, for sure, were by the lunatics in the Iranian diaspora and Zionists who want to see, the country bombed. Those were the
Well,
big.
Dimitri, we we did have a march with 50,000 pro-Zionist people and Smotrich in New York, of course. Eh?
Exact. That's what they're seeing. So you're telling me that the United States government is on its knees? Why? Why would it be on its knees? It just got an 11th hour reprieve from an economic crisis, and in exchange, the only thing it's giving to Iran is lifting the blockade, which I think is going to be temporary. That's it. They've not got any sanctions relief, or maybe they're going to give them a little waiver for a month or two so they can sell their oil. Okay, they'll give them that, and that's worth something. We shouldn't suggest that, especially if Iran is in an economic crisis. But the really meaty benefits are being kicked down the road, and I don't think that they're ever going to materialize. I don't think that I laughed when I saw this provision for a $300 billion reconstruction fund. Uh, First of all, it's so ambiguously worded. It's what does it even mean? Okay, but secondly, the idea that Donald Trump is going to allow $300 billion to be invested in Iran when it's under the control of a government that is not a vassal of Washington. Uh, I don't think so. I don't see that. It's laughable. That's not going to happen unless the United States is brought to the point of economic collapse.
Yeah, it's a lifting of economic sanctions and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I agree with you when you said the pain is not enough. I totally agree with you. And look at Israel, man. It just goes mayhem. It's like, oh, one Israeli soldier, a one apartment block in you guys. Oh, and now they're saying one Israeli soldier, 10 or 50 apartment blocks in Lebanon. I mean, these people have not had a bloody nose for such a long time. They really couldn't care less what they're doing to people. And like I said, we cannot put this all on Iran. I mean, this is on us. This is on the whole world to pressure our governments to stop this. Let's be honest. Iran is the only country that has actually done something. So we cannot sit here from the sidelines and say, "Oh, Iran should do more." And this, and the first responsibility is on all of us to stop our governments from supporting this. That's number one. But what I'm trying to say is that, like you said, if you see the absolute total lunacy of the political class of the whole society, by the way, of Israel, and you see it Ben Gvir and Smotrich and all the stuff they're saying openly, and like these guys just have no fear whatsoever for any repercussions. They think that they're literally walking on clouds, man. Like nothing can happen to us. Oh, we will just bomb 50 apartment blocks. Let's burn the whole society. And it's yeah, that's what happens to you when you can literally get away with everything for almost 100 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more with that. And I think this is actually where, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of time left now, but this is exactly where we should conclude this conversation. What you just said. Okay, this is the most important point that I can think of to communicate to people who are listening to our conversation, especially if you live in the West. We have the responsibility to stop the monsters who rule us. It is our responsibility, first and foremost, not the responsibility of the Iranian people or the Iranian state. They have been on the receiving end of the depravity of the governments that speak in our name, that have been empowered by members of our society in our so called elections, and that are funded with our taxes. And a message that I think people really should take to heart is that there is no such thing as effective, risk free resistance. It doesn't exist in the real world. What I mean by that is if you think you're resisting, but you are not exposing yourself to personal risk, whether it's risk of losing your job, risk of imprisonment, risk of being physically injured or worse, then your resistance is ineffective. They don't care about your resistance unless unless you are, or if they care about your resistance, then you're going to be subjected to these things. This is going to happen to you. If you're not being subjected to these things, it means that the government doesn't give a damn about your resistance. So the perfect example of this, of non-effective, risk-free resistance, is people going out into the streets and having these polite protests where they go on a planned route and they have their marshals and nobody goes out, out of the space that they've been allocated by the police, and they tell the police in advance that they're going to be there. They don't actually cause any disruption to the local economy. They don't do damage to any property. It goes on for an hour and a half. They feel good about themselves. They go home and the elite yawns. That's their reaction.
No
Why
king,
should
no
we?
kings.
They don't give a damn. They don't give a damn. And it makes you feel good. Go ahead. Do your polite little protest. It's not going to change a thing. All those petitions you're signing, you think that's resistance? Do you think they care about your petitions? Some piece of paper that has tens of thousands of signatures on it, they couldn't care less. You have to inflict some kind of penalty on them. And if you do, they'll come after you. So the perfect example of this is Palestine action. That's resistance. That's resistance in the West. If you're not doing something that is exposing you to risk of some kind of retribution from the elites, then they don't care about your resistance. It's not effective.
Yeah, amen, brother. Amen. I absolutely agree with you, and I think that's what people often fail to notice. Like they're so, I've noticed also in panels and stuff, and I get the emotion, but they're so angry at Iran for like, how can you fail them, or how can you do this? And then I'm like, you're so used to one country defending the oppressed in West Asia that you get angry when they're not doing it good enough. But you should be so much more angry at the rest of the world literally doing nothing. And I include all the major powers in there, also in the global south. I don't have any, I'm not going to say, ooh, there's this anti-imperialist world that is doing something behind the scenes or whatever. We are watching this monstrosity for 3 years and nothing is happening, and we can thank Iran for at least doing a lot to try and stop this. Um, Brother, thank you very much, and let's do a rant of brothers soon next time.
I love that title. It's always great talking to you, brother. Thank you for having me on. And I'm going to have you on our program soon. We got to have you on in the next week or two.
Static crackles, voices rise. Truth breaks through their velvet lies. A screen of fire, a shield of steel. Bedbeat medium makes you feel. No borders, no change. No silence.